Hello, good afternoon. I am Chizz Bah, and you might hear background noise. That would be my dog. She's eating her dog food. We're trying to get her back to eating dog food. We kind of spoiled her by eating table food. Not a good idea, right? But anywho, so I'm Chizz Bah, and we're going to do a little bit of, what is life like living in what's called the Chizz bringing urban westernization into, I guess, whatever tribe affiliation. How do you merge the two? How do you maintain tradition, and then how do you maintain your life, the bread and butter, the roof over your head, clothes on your back, food on the table, shelter, all of that, transportation, your children. How do you do all that? It's doable, I'm going to say that much, with the Navajo Nation, Navajo tribe, the Netka, people of the Navajo. I only specifically state Navajo because, of accountability, credibility. I am Navajo, so I'm going to probably make reference to more of Navajo and, some Native American indigenous, but like I said, due to credibility, I'm the source of that because I'm Navajo. So anywho, today, today's a very windy day. I could have gone the route of, let's go. I wanted to visually maybe show the difference because we're right at what we call the border town, and a lot of people don't understand what border town is. They assume that, especially when you're living in New Mexico and you're at the border of New Mexico and Arizona. I've recently found out through associates and, newly friends I met over social media that there is a lack of understanding that New Mexico is a part of the United States of America. Yes, literally, some people read it as the newer Mexico, New Mexico, Nuevo Mexico, which makes sense, Hey. However, it is part of the United States of America, and I was born and raised in Arizona, and I currently live in New Mexico with my family, my children, and we are right at the border meaning between the Navajo Nation Reservation and the city limits of San Juan County. So that's why I say I live at the border. So I reside, or my home, what I consider my home, would be if I had the opportunity, the financial means, and the government support, I suppose, for me to allow me to physically own land on the reservation, I would be living out in Abijinasla, which is Cove, Arizona, which is where I was brought up and raised. That would be the case. However, because of the way the reservations are set up, they're not meant to be owned, right? So with that, I have to live in the city in order to be able to, or in the town, local town area, to be able to survive and make have employment opportunities for my children so that they can earn their education and then also be able to support themselves, having a decent opportunity for employment. Because as we know, on the reservation, it was initially not set up for success. It was intended for failure, not knowing that resiliency was going to be the survival of all of our tribes. So with that, here we are today. How do you, as a Chizzy, people are like, what is Chizzy? Chizzy is the hardcore, rough, Navajo-raised individual who knows all and anything there is to know about living out on the reservation, living out at your home. Where I was raised, it's Abijinasla, and I know how to say it. I know what it smells like when it rains. I know how it sounds at night. I know how it sounds when the wind blows. I know how it feels when the wind is blowing and there's snow. It's cold and freezing, but just the beauty of seeing the snow falling and the just snow all around you, and walking and hearing the sound of crunching noises as you're walking on top of the snow, or when the snow begins to clear and you begin to see the red dirt, and you see a little bit of patches of white, and eventually you start to see the green, and you can smell the new spring, at springtime, and you can hear the sound of the bells from the herd of sheep that your family is raising. And you hear the sound of just the wind blowing in the trees near the arroyo, the water streams where the sheep feed. All of that, you see your footstep in the sand, and the only footstep in the sand, along with the hoof, the prints of the sheep hooves, as you're walking and following them down to the water stream. And it takes you back even more so that you think about of when you were a child and just running around freely, safely, just enjoying being you. No classification, no status, no no imprinting, I guess you would say, of the Western civilization, other than maybe, of course, Bureau of Indian Affairs, getting the education out there. But anyhow, so that's home. It takes me, as you can probably see, it mentally takes you back home when you think of Chizz. What is Chizz? And the urban version, urban dictionary, if you will, is probably what would be equal to ashy. If you know the term ashy, then that would be Chizz. So that's what Chizz is. And then Bah is the warrior in all of us, especially if you're Native American, whether it is, originally it's for our military veterans. But in this day and age, especially right now in this present time, we're experiencing spiritual battles with a pandemic that that's indifferent to where we come from, who we are, what we have. And so each one of us have that Bah in us, that warrior within us, where we have to, once again, battle at the front line for our families and keep our families safe. So that's Bah. So today, I'm just going to show you a little bit about, and you might see in the background, I have here woven handmade rugs that have been brought down by many generations, as far as the lessons and what I've learned that no textbook, no instructor in a physical setting could have ever taught me. This is through observation, this is through listening, this is through smelling, this is through feeling, this is through touching. That's how all of this has gone from where it is now to here. So I am from a two generation of weavers, and my daughter would be the third generation, correct? 1, 2, 3, 4. No, fourth generation. I'm the third generation. So a piece I do not have right now is my grandmother's. I don't have a piece of hers, but how I do the weaving, how I do everything, and the understanding of all the tools that I've inherited from her, which has its own story as to how I have been blessed with all the tools that I've inherited. It wasn't how you imagine, there's a will and there's a meeting of families and there's a division of belongings. That wasn't like that. With being a Navajo and being I believe in divine intervention. I believe in spiritual growth. I believe in a journey, a mission. And when that journey comes to find you, and you may have multiple journeys, and I have been one to have been blessed with multiple journeys due to the fact that I've been blessed with attention deficit disorder. So I've learned that I hold many abilities. The anxiety comes from managing all of it, but once I've learned to manage it, I'm able to use those tools in the correct way, or as their intended use is to be, I guess. So I've inherited mostly all her tools. I don't have my grandmother's piece, but I do have her tools, and I do have her tenacity when it comes to weaving, because it requires a lot, let me tell you, especially for somebody with ADD. Oh my goodness, it's been quite a journey, because it's not exactly when you first begin, as much as my brain can be random, chaotic, and spontaneous and impulsive, weaving has been a blessing, and then has also been a huge obstacle for me. A blessing in the sense that I'm able to weave all of my abstract thinking into something tangible, and be able to process that and get it out, so that I can do something more productive, something more manageable, like work, being a parent, being a productive member of society in a healthy manner. And as through the years have gone, I've learned to manage that and become skillful and master designs through projects I've been blessed with to do. I've woven, I think, about 5 or 6 what we call beaded woven dresses for our young Native American women, young girls who become women and ambassadors of our Navajo Nation. Woven dresses with their own traditional family designs, which has been that's been a true teaching in this. And each dress I've woven, there's always a special tasks that I have maybe not been familiar with, but I've had to learn as I go through it. Like I said, it's a process. There are some designs that required more discipline for me that I hadn't had yet, and so I managed to figure it out. There's a lot of calculating required in this. There's a lot of understanding of tension required in what you're going to produce. There's a lot of measuring and to get the designs that you want. And I think back to back in 1868 with our weavers who were removed from the Navajo Nation and went through the long walk to Bosque Redondo. And in fact, I graduated, with my Bachelor of Science in Sociology and Psychology back in the 90s. And I went to a school, in fact, that was located about an hour away from Bosque Redondo. And I remember the first time I drove through that area with friends, I had this sense of sadness that I couldn't understand. I was literally saddened. And in that moment, I just felt like I felt alone, and I felt abandoned. And I couldn't describe it then, but I can describe it now. Because later on in the years, I had gone back just recently, and I actually went to the site of Bosque Redondo, which is something you don't do as a Diné, because of the dangers of the emotional and social turmoil that you take on from the energy that has been left there. And I took that risk because I wanted to understand. So, but I'm one who's familiar with how your neurotransmitter works and how to, manage your social emotional distress and learn how to redirect your attention. So I felt like I knew I was taking a risk, but I had the tools to know what I needed to do should I feel the immense um, anxiety and sadness, which I did experience, but I managed to get myself out of it. But anywho, being at that time in that place, and every time I weave, I think about I think about back then, and I think, they were weaving, because I like to do, before I take on a new weaving project, like this is free. This is not free, as in, this is clean slate. This is my opportunity to be able to create whatever design I choose to, the colors, the patterns. Whereas the other items, they were in order, and so a particular design was asked for, so I would follow the design or the pattern. So this one is free for me to do. So when it's something free for me to do and be creative in it, I like to do I like to do my research. I'm all about credibility. And one of the most interesting parts to weaving for me is researching rugs that had been woven back in the early 1800s, the designs. And I think back and I think, wow, the mathematics in that, the storytelling in that, the timing in that, there must have been a lot of, in my mind, I see it as a way to journal what was going on. It was a way to give direction and a way to recall certain places, certain uh, physical uh, physical markers of where home was and which direction home is. So I feel like every piece that was woven then was actually some type of instruction, or for direction, some type of physical hidden code, if you will, is how I see it and I understand it. And I just look at the designs and I'm just in awe of it, and knowing how much stress at that time, and just the danger that our ancestors were going through at that time, of being placed at Fort Sumner in Bosque Redondo, miles away from their home, and going through, as we're going through now, a pandemic, and the cold and the winter, and the weavers there, that probably got them out of, they were able to mentally disconnect themselves and redirect their attention on an open slate, a clean slate, and to be able to create something. So that's what comes to mind when I weave. Everybody has their own journey with weaving. Everybody has their own understanding of weaving, but that's where I come from with mine. So the pieces I'll share you is, this piece here is an original piece by, in the Navajo way we have, you might not be biologically related to an auntie, a nephew, an uncle, a brother, a sister, but by clan or by, because we're such a matriarchal society, the matriarch, if there's a missing piece to the matriarch, then you're the next in line to play that particular role. But this one is by one of my other grandmothers, I call, and that's through a distant relative, but from my grandfather's side. And she had made this one, and it's a unique piece and I'll explain this one here next. And this is a unique piece because it is all hand, of course, they're all hand woven. But this here is, as you can see, it's a circular form, which is very, very unique. And this is a one of a kind I own in my home. And she just had a recent birthday, and I believe she's up in her, I want to say she's about 100 years old. She was the woman who, my auntie, my grandmother, who participated in one of the important ceremonies in my life. And so to have a piece originally made by her. And this is originally her livestock, her wool of her livestock, that she carded and colored through natural colors. And, you know, and one day, you know, we always visit during the summertime because, you know, we have livestock in the mountain during the summertime, or some families do. We don't so much as have the livestock anymore. But we like to go up to the mountain where we have our summer camp for our what used to be the area for my grandparents' livestock. And so this is one of the pieces that was made by her that she gave to me one summer. And here is, I have wool here. This I actually got from another relative who's not here with us anymore, who recently passed, and she had a lot of yarn. So I was blessed with the yarn that she had, and she as well. She had her own sheep and goats and sheep, and so this is one of the originals. So it was nicely wrapped, but like I said, I have my dog here who lives with me, and she decided it was playtime. So that's kind of one of the struggles you have, is, you know, how do you put the two worlds together? You know, you have a little puppy, a dog who's about 2 years old, so she's acting like a toddler, and she thinks everything is playful. So this she's made into another project where I'm going to have to detangle it and then roll it back up. But this one I don't think I'll use because it's an original, but I will continue to have it as a lot of pieces that I have. A lot of rolls that I have of yarn in my piece are just original for keepsake purposes. And the other thing is I have major allergies, and so this is real wool. So as I'm holding it, I'm starting to sniffle, and my eardrums are right now, because it's so windy, my barometric pressure or whatever is intense, and then mixing it with the wool, working with real wool, is a little bit of a struggle, as you can tell. So we'll put that right there. So this is one of the pieces that was made. This piece here is a piece that my mother made. Now, my mom was a very, very, very strong, very fierce woman. Worked her way through all the way into retirement at a very young age on the reservation as a single parent, raised me and my brother, and huge on just working, where she was a workaholic, hard worker, maintained a farm, a huge farm at that. Maintained livestock, helped her parents maintain livestock, and because they didn't have running water or electricity, and even as her parents had just moved on from this world, they only had solar lights, and it wasn't until about 5 years after they had passed, electricity line was run through the house. And then the water line just within the last 10 years. So that's just kind of the world that we have. That's the reality of our world. And my grandparents are very hardworking. They managed their livestock. They managed, my grandfather was a railroad worker, and so would have to migrate, of course, with work and return. And my grandmother was a weaver, and she had her livestock, and from my understanding, they did a lot of trading with local community with vegetables and fruits and mutton, which is then our just our meat and our luxuries, you know, of having the riches and the blessings back then. So that was my grandparents. So they had quite a bit of livestock, and so they had their ranch area on the reservation. So their daughter, my mom, she took on my mother's weaving skills, and so this is the piece she wove, and she's woven several, and she hands them out to her niece and nephews, and so that's where that is. And like me, she's a little impatient. So when I asked to learn how to weave, it was a little bit of a struggle for her to have to step back and I guess teach me, a child with ADD back then, how to set up a loom and so forth, which she, I'm sure, with quite the strength did what she needed to do to help me learn how to do this. And this is what I learned from her, is how to originally set it up. And eventually, I think one summer from college, I took a break one summer because I was going through the years, through every semester. And this piece here I made. So this piece here is my first complete piece that I made. There is another small piece which I made when I was in high school, which is another interesting story, because that was actually from a teacher who is not Navajo, who set up the opportunity for us to pick and choose our own projects for a grade. And not thinking he was the person who encouraged me to consider weaving. And I was like, weaving? Far from my mind. But I attempted it, and with a little bit of guidance from my mother, I managed to make a little piece, and that's as far as I had gone. So this actually came until about later on in life, when I was about maybe 19 or 20, maybe even 22, 23, I don't know. And then later on in life. And then the next piece is this piece. So now, years later, I have several pieces that I've done on my part when I decided I was going to take on the journey of a weaver and really spend the time to learn about weaving. So with that piece, those pieces are more abstract. There's no consistency, because usually with a rug you go halfway and then you repeat. Well, mentally I wasn't there yet. I couldn't quite do that. So I allowed myself about 2 or 3 years of just randomly going through designs. There was no repetition in the designs. I was as creative as I wanted to be, and I enjoyed it. But then eventually it got to a point where I was becoming more skillful at designs, and it became a part of self-employment, as I started receiving orders for dresses, which I never thought I could ever do. And it took one person to say, I think you could do it. Just do it. If you would, please, And I decided to venture into that. So I made my first dress, and since then, made several other dresses. But this is the piece I appreciate, because now this is my 4th generation daughter, who I had one summer. My son can weave. I taught him how to weave. This is my daughter's weaving piece, and so this is her piece right here. And I had a project that was going for about a year, about a year and a half actually, because I work 9 to 5 as well, or 8 to 5 as well too. So didn't quite have the time to support her so that she could finish it. So she had gone to a section about there. And then just yesterday, I think it was 2 days ago, I asked if she would be okay for me to help her to complete it, or if she wanted to complete it. And I think she had said it was okay for me to complete. And so I completed the rest of the way with this. So this is the abstract that I'm referring to. This is a design that I just completed with a dress prior to this one. I had just finished that dress just this week, put it together, and I delivered it, which is the most nerve-wracking, because anything can happen. Just a minor splash, a minor drop on the ground, and it's so nerve-wracking. So it safely was delivered, and this is the design I learned off of that dress, and it was a set. So this is the design. So this is the last piece of that design that was still in me, so I decided to put that here for her. And here's the abstract that I was referring to. Really no quite consistency, other than maybe just the angles, and then maybe a repetition just to close out. So we just finished this one. So she's looking for a frame for this one to put in her room. I was actually wanting it. I was thinking it was going to be a little, an over-the-shoulder type bag if we sewed it onto another piece of material. But she wanted to put it in her room. So I was very proud of that and honored that she thought, no, I want to put it in my room, because that's very important. So we did the final closure right before we took it down, which is the blessing of it, and so we completed that. So this is one that my daughter and I have just recently done. And then today is my clean slate, so I'm getting ready to set this up. And I believe you guys have a weaver who I'm sure gives you more as to the details here. Other than that, that's what Chizz Bah is, living in town off the reservation, hoping one day, maybe I'll be able to build my own home with the financial means on the reservation where I was originally raised and grown. But for now, I live in this community on concrete and blacktop road, and go to work and make sure my children are going to school, and that's pretty much everything. And here comes my son. All right, in a recording. So if he decides he wants to be part of the recording, there he is. You guys want to wave real quick? Get in the camera and wave? No, he's not. There's my daughter. So, and he said, I just want water, Mom. See, that's the other part of living in the urban, urban res. That's just what it is. You have your children who, during the pandemic, they're like, who cares if you're recording? Mom, I want water. I'm not going to be the one to tell my son, you can't have water right now. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and saga. I hope you enjoyed it. And just be kind to yourself, be kind to others. If you have attention deficit disorder, you have many blessings, you have many tokens. Learn all about them and use them all. All right, peace out. Love ya. Much love. Ahiho.